Hey guys, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to try something new. I'm going to start a series called Explaining the Meme. Today we're going to look at this meme which says Frontend is easy, and it lists a bunch of config files here. So the main problem with this meme is that it makes it appear as if all of these config files are actually needed. So we are going to take a look at each of these config files and try to understand whether they are actually needed there. So to get started with, firstly let's look at the .babel.rc file here. Babel, or Babel as it is called, is basically a compiler for next generation TypeScript, or more realistically it's a transpiler which converts advanced JavaScript, that is ECMAScript 2015 plus code, into backwards compatible version of JavaScript. This is so that when you are writing JavaScript which is more advanced than what your current node version or the browser supports, you can transpile it to the version that it can support directly. And this .babel rc file is used to configure all of the settings relating to that. So let's look at some examples of Babel in action. Here on the left hand side you can see the various types of code which is being written in modern JavaScript, while on the right hand side Babel is generating a browser compatible version of the same code. The link to this will also be put in the description. Next we have ESLint here. The .ESLint rc.js is used to configure ESLint, which is a pluggable JavaScript linter. Linting is the process of analyzing code for potential errors. ESLint is used to detect errors and bad coding patterns in JavaScript and TypeScript. As an example, here's an example .ESLint.rc file. Basically, this defines a set of rules that the ESLint linter will check for. The first one is, for example, EQ, which checks for triple equals to being used throughout the code. Since this is set to off right now, this won't check for triple equals to, but otherwise you can cause it to throw an error in case double equals to is used anywhere. The same goes for curly, which throws an error in case code blocks are used without using curly braces. And this rule is for quotes, where in case single quotes are being used, it will throw an error and it will try to enforce double quotes throughout the code base. Next we have Git Ignore. Git Ignore is just a Git file which allows you to set some files or folder paths which you do not want to upload to your Git repository. To look at examples of .git ignore, you can look at this web page by Atlassian, where they list a bunch of ways that you can ignore various files in Git. Next, we have .prettier ignore and .prettier rc.json here. These files are basically used to configure the Prettier code formatter. Prettier is a code formatter which supports multiple languages and integrates with various text editors like VS Code or Sublime. So if you click on try it online here, you can see how it works. So here on the left hand side we have some code which is not prettified, which is just plainly pasted, and then via some Prettier rules you can then configure it to have a standard format, and you can use this format across all of the code files for your code base. Next up we have Readme.MD. Readme.MD allows you to define README files for your Git repositories in the Markdown syntax. This is so that anyone who wants to use or contribute to your repository can simply read through your README to understand the project. Markdown here being a rich text syntax which you can read more about in GitHub's guide online. I'll link it in the description below. As a visual example, here's some text in Markdown, and here's its final output in a visual format. If you scroll through this, you can see how Markdown works. Next up we have Jest, which is a simple way in JavaScript to test your code. So it works with various types of projects like Babel, TypeScript, Node, and React. And you can have a look at it at justjs.io. I'll also link to a tutorial where it will show how you can describe these tests and then run them, so that if any of these tests fail, you get a good log of them in your terminal like this. Now let's rapidly look at the last few config files here. jsconfig.json and tsconfig.json are both just config files for your code base. You don't need both of them at the same time. It's either jsconfig.json or tsconfig.json. If your code base is in JavaScript, you have jsconfig.json, and if it is in TypeScript, you have tsconfig.json. Lint staged is used to only lint those files which have any changes in them. This is so that the linter like ESLint or any other tool that you are using doesn't run every time over the entire code base and only runs over the files which have changed from the last time. Next we have next env.d.ts. This is a Next.js specific file which is generated. Next is a React framework for production. So when you enable TypeScript for Next.js, it automatically generates this file and you don't actually have to do anything for it. And lastly, we have package.json and yarn.log. All of the npm dependencies are listed in package.json, and yarn.log simply just lists those dependencies or locks the dependencies into a specific version in this case. To learn more about Yarn and how you can get started with it, you can go to yarnpackage.com. So that was it guys, thanks for watching and catch you in the next video. If you like this video, be sure to follow me on Twitter @TheWritingDev.